Welcome everyone to The Scoop. Welcome to our brand new studio. I am Eric. That is David.
Great guess.
Yes. And we're excited to be in our bigger studio. Social distancing, Dave, of course. But yeah, we're good. It's good to be here. But we're gonna get started, and we're gonna freshen our minds. The topics is the NCAA tournament. On our last broadcast, we were still in the first round. We had thought at the time that maybe UConn had a shot. Didn't even get past Maryland. But plenty of other upsets along the way. But we'll start with the Final Four, Dave. And the Final Four teams, Gonzaga, UCLA, Baylor, and Houston. In my bracket, if you remember, I actually got 3 out of 4 correct on that. If you don't remember.
I don't remember, man.
You don't remember?
I had 6 brackets myself. 1 was right, 5 were horribly wrong.
Yeah, I had 5-2, and I picked UConn in 1, so that wasn't horribly wrong. And but I am in the bracket we discussed on our last broadcast. I did have Gonzaga as the obvious favorite. Baylor was expected as a number 1 seed. I called Houston, and you're intrigued by that, I think. Having
I have them in one of my Final Fours also.
And then but probably the big surprise, of course, is UCLA. As an 11th seed, getting past Michigan. And so I guess the question, David, we'll start with the easy one, I guess, Dave, is, who's going to win it out of these 4? I think the answer might be obvious to many, but I don't know if you have any second thoughts based on what you've seen in tournament play in terms of who's going to win it. And then we'll kind of dissect, I guess, some of the upsets along the way.
I think Gonzaga is going to win it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that they can get tripped up by Houston or Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're gonna get by UCLA pretty convincingly.
Yeah.
It's the end of the run for them, and it's been quite the run for them.
Mm-hmm.
Being one of the first 4 play-in games, so they weren't even guaranteed a spot in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So they really had to play, and I just don't know if they have it in the tank to be in the game. And Gonzaga has shown why they're beating good teams.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a long night for UCLA tomorrow night. So Gonzaga will play for the national championship, and I think that they're going to get a very tired Houston team who's going to upset Baylor.
Okay.
I think, and knowing the American a bit, having been in that conference for a dreadful 7 years with the UConn Huskies. Houston can play.
Yes.
Houston, there's one of the ipso factos of us being in that conference was we got to see who the top dogs in that conference were and who weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And consistently year after year, if it wasn't, because it wasn't often UConn, but typically the 2 at the top were Cincinnati
Mm-hmm.
and Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And Houston they always gave us fits.
Yeah.
And they have the talent, they've got the coaching, and I think that they're also just a very sound team. They have their 5 is good.
Yeah.
They get into foul trouble, different ball game. But I think their core 5 is what's gonna potentially get them past Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
Baylor's been shown to get into some foul trouble, and if that happens, I think Houston can stay with them and not only keep it competitive but potentially upset the Baylor Bears. So my Final Four is Gonzaga, Houston.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I had in my bracket, and I think the Houston-Baylor matchup, there's a lot of favoritism toward Baylor.
There is,
behind second,
and rightfully so.
Second to Gonzaga, Baylor is considered the next team up in case Gonzaga trips somewhere.
Right.
But I do agree. I think Houston had a lot of depth this year, and it showed in the tournament time. It's very funny because there's a couple of themes I think during this tournament run. There was some. We talked about last time the Blue Bloods obviously not really doing anything this tournament. You had Kansas, get only past the first round. UNC didn't even make win their game against Wisconsin, and there's Roy Williams retiring. That's a different subject. So you didn't have the Blue Bloods really carrying the load this year. I think the story has been the Pac-12, and obviously UCLA making it to the Final Four really just caps off kind of that enthusiasm.
Colorado, USC, Oregon, we're all in the Sweet 16.
Exactly. You get Oregon State that,
Oregon State.
I know you correct me that every time. But
because they'll be harsher.
They'll be harsh. Yeah, I know. But they were considered to be the worst team.
State, right.
They're going to be the worst team in a conference that was not supposed to do anything this year.
Right.
To an Elite 8 match.
Yep. Right.
And got pretty, and it was close.
It was.
For sure. But definitely UCL being there as an 11th seed. And part of it, too, I think, is how that whole bracket unfolded. Again, that Texas loss to Abigail
Christian, yep.
That really, I think, set the tone for
Abilene Christian.
I'm sorry.
Who's this Abigail woman? Do we have to tell Brittany something?
I know. She's a lovely lady. But no, I think, I think we talked about the bottom of that bracket how we thought maybe UConn could do a little more damage than they did.
Right.
Maybe upsetting Alabama. But then Texas losing that game, I think, really set the tone.
Sure.
And then Michigan obviously turned it on. There was belief that of the 1 seeds, Michigan was the one that could probably falter first because of injuries.
Right.
But they impressed, and they got all the way to the Elite Eight.
Yep.
And that Michigan UCLA finish, I mean, let me tell you something. That was insane.
Right.
But it just goes to show that, not to say that Michigan necessarily played a bad game, but it was low scoring. It was in the 50s.
Yep.
And that UCLA just had the willpower, to survive and advance, what we call it. And so, you have an 11 seed in there, and it's happened a few times, of course, over the tournament play. George Mason as an 11 seed, remember, did it beating UConn as a 1 seed. Yep. So a pretty similar scenario right there.
Sure.
But they're going to be a heavy underdog against Gonzaga. That's just the reality. Gonzaga,
to lose.
They have not, they've had 4 tournament games, and they've basically been not even close each time. They've had 4, immaculate games.
Yeah. Some would argue that the Elite Eight game to get to the Final Four, they didn't even play great. I was hearing some announcers say, like, this is an off day.
Well, they were playing USC.
Yeah.
And, again, USC was another Pac-12 team that kind of just came out of the woodwork and, really showed off, the talent of Pac-12. But I think against UCLA, it'll probably be close to a 20-point game, but I think later on that's going to be a 10-point victory. And again, that Houston-Baylor game, it's interesting to see the Americans since 2014 when UConn won it all. It's the first time we've had an American team in the Final Four, if I recall. I could be mistaken. Maybe Cincinnati. I don't think even Cincinnati got in there. So
I don't think so.
So it's good to see the Americans. So basically, you have 2. I don't know if we call American a mid-major, but they're definitely not considered a power.
No,
5
but they have some ballers.
But you have 2 seats at the table that don't go to your Big 5 power conferences.
Yeah.
And then you have Baylor obviously and UCLA in the Pac-12. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm with you, Dave. I think Gonzaga. I said in the beginning of the tournament. I say now this is Gonzaga's year. So far, they have not shown any signs of real weakness. But I do think Gonzaga over Houston will be the final outcome. So look forward to that game. But moving on, Dave, and we'll go to the women's side quickly. And again, us being UConn people, as my professor in college once said, welcome to UConn, where men are men and women are champions. And with the UConn women, once again, here we are in a Final Four. Controversial game with Baylor. And I don't know if you watched that, Dave, but there was a questionable no foul call late in the game. But nevertheless, UConn did win. Bucher, what's her name?
Paige Beckers.
Paige Beckers, yeah. Paige Beckers. Went off in that game. I believe it was 29 points, I want to say.
28, 29, yeah.
Killing it from 3 and, helped them get by a very good Baylor team.
Yes.
Baylor probably should have been number 1 seed because, UConn can be playing Arizona in the Final Four. And again,
tonight at 9:30.
Gino's not taking Arizona light, but let's be honest. And I think in everyone's opinion, Baylor was a bigger threat to UConn than what we expect from Arizona. I do expect UConn to beat Arizona, but Gino's definitely not taking them lightly.
And you shouldn't.
And you should especially this season of the tournament, you should not. But I guess the 2 things I want to bring up, Dave, is the no foul call with Baylor. There's always been a lot of controversy about the refs letting them play versus obvious calls. And even if you didn't watch it, Dave, I don't know if you saw the highlights. Did you think that was a foul? Do you think it's fair that UConn's gaining the criticism because they're UConn and I know LeBron James kind of chimed in a little bit about how that was a foul and Gino is non-apologetic about this. He's like how many times has been a call go the other way? So do you have a pulse on if you think that was a foul or not? And what do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't. here's the thing. Game on the line, I think you put the whistle in your pocket.
Mhm.
You don't want to say, and I say that to say this. It very well might have been a foul.
Mhm.
It looked like it could have gone either way.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that comment, though, like, if it could go either way, second game on the line, I don't believe the whistle should be called. And it can be argued in many sports that, especially in football where, give or take, and obviously it's subjective, but, one could argue a holding on almost every single play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They get missed, they get overlooked, and then there's ones that obviously get called.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me to my point of, if it was a foul, they missed it, end of story. They blow that whistle, and she goes to the line and hits both shots, there's going to be scrutiny the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I just don't believe that there's the solution is to like, and I try to follow like the golden rule of if you're that upset over that loss, don't get in that position again.
Dave, I'm glad you went there because I 100%, and that's where I was going to go with this because I agree with you. You don't want referees deciding games.
You don't,
because we've seen this gone both ways. We've seen where they don't call, and then people are like, "Oh, why don't you make that call?" And obvious. And then we've seen it where they make a call, and they're like, "Oh,
why'd you make that call?
That
could have." Yeah.
Dave, Baylor was up 10 points in this game.
I know.
With 7-8 minutes left in the game, I believe, or maybe it was a little earlier. Than
that.
Yeah, but
still,
they had a 10-point lead. They were in control, and UConn went on a 19-0 run.
Yep.
And Baylor kind of came back a little bit. But I'm with you, Dave. Like, if you don't want this game to come down to something controversial, put your opponent away. UConn was playing well that game, but Baylor was hitting shots.
They were.
And they were definitely getting some separation. And they knew that UConn was going to come back, and they had to step up.
Right.
I know one of their players went down, and I think got injured.
Yeah, she did. It was unfortunate.
But at the very least, play some stronger defense. Keep them in front of you. Kill the clock a little bit if you can. But don't let a team like UConn, which is full of talent, we know that, get on a hot run so they get back in the game. And that's what happened. They got back in the game, and as a result, it became a controversial ending. But UConn made the shots. UConn got back in the game, made the shots, and survived the non-call. And so with that, obviously being UConn, alumni, maybe you can say I'm biased, but that's my feeling. I'm going to feel the same way about a lot of different sporting events, whether it's teams I root for or not. That's how I leave it. But UConn, they're in the 13th straight Final Four, unprecedented. There's nothing to say they can't win the championship, Dave. I think anything can happen. I know Stanford always can give them a fight. But yeah, this is unprecedented. If Gino can win us another championship, after gone through maybe a little bit of a slump since Brianna Stewart left, now have Paige Beckers, can bring another maybe 3 or 4 championships. She's a freshman. Look what she's done already. So it's been pretty exciting. But yeah, before we go to break, we want to bring up one more topic, Dave, and Ryan Bouknight and
James Bouknight.
James Bouknight. Yep. It's gonna be a common theme, Dave. Just can't get the names right. But Bouknight, this guy, Bouknight, yeah. We watched the game, Dave, the Maryland game, and we heard the rumors that he was going to draft. But when you watch that game, that UConn Maryland game, you didn't see somebody who looked NBA ready. Now we know throughout the year he had a lot of big moments, and he had a lot of big names games numbers wise, and we know he's a very talented player, definitely the most talented player on the UConn Huskies. But to say he's going to the NBA draft now, especially when you put on that kind of performance in the tournament game, is this the right decision for James Bouknight?
Okay, well, you asked that question. I was about to go off on you, but the way you ended that and asked it, is this the right decision for him?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Is this selfishly the right decision from a fan's perspective or from a potential scout's perspective who might have seen that championship game and potentially demoted his value? Then heck no.
Okay.
But from a perspective of him, he's projected at going in the top 20, you go. You go. If you're in the top 20, you go. regardless of anything else you go. And again, and this is why I preface this kind of to say, the second part of that is, selfishly as a fan, I want him back. I think he could use another year. I watched almost every minute of every game this season. And last season when he was a freshman, just missing the NCAA tournament because it got cut short because of COVID. The talent is there, which is why I think he could have used another year.
Okay.
But, I think from a maybe maturity standpoint, game maturity, game IQ maturity, speed of the game, playing with potentially a little bit more pressure of a full year with fans, rather than a little less pressure under the lights. Because when you get to the league, especially now that and I say this obviously with a grain of salt, but as we transition here to a little bit more of normalcy, and fans start to come back to arenas and to ballparks and stuff like that, now there's a whole new element to the game that he just completely missed out on a year of, not playing in front of people for the most part, and which can be a big aspect to of a kid's will, maturity, and desire and motivation sometimes too. Because I've heard players say, there's nothing like that roar of the crowd when you hit a shot, and it just pushes you to go that extra mile. But again, college to NBA is a little different, in the sense that also you're given a lot more freedom at the NBA, and I'm not sure. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not sure. I mean, he thinks and believes he's ready, and he's being told X, Y, and Z. We don't know, but because again, the talent's there. He's a heck of a player, man. I watched him all year. He's a stud. He's a freak of an athlete. So no question to me that I think he can ball at the next level. But there's a lot of tangible evidence pointing to the fact that another year would have skyrocketed him into the top 10. But again, top 10 versus top 20, there's some money differential there. But again, if you're guaranteed top 20 because of the money incentives in the NBA, you go. And so I don't blame him for going.
Well, Dave, I guess there's something to say about taking the money and run. When
you don't risk injury.
When you know you're top, and the injury thing is always a big concern. Maybe more in football than it is like basketball, but it's still definitely a concern. When you know that they're projected to be a top 20 pick, and teams looking at you and they're willing to give you nice big rookie contracts,
right? It's
definitely an incentive, towards going to NBA.
Yeah.
To me, I guess the question is about development.
Sure. That's what I was saying.
And that's always it's not to sit here and say that he's not worthy of drafting the NBA. But the question I always ask is what are you sacrificing by, jumping ship early? Because, NBA, they're not afraid to cut you out if you just don't show early on that you have the skill sets,
right,
to be there.
Sure.
And again, I admit it. I have not watched as many games as you have. So
I know. You called him Ryan.
I'm not getting the full picture about. Yeah, I know. I was thinking about Ryan Boatnight. From 2011.
Ryan Boatwright?
Yeah, Boatwright. Yeah, that's why I get them confused. They sound They sound so familiar, but I did not watch as many games this year, but I knew that he had big turnouts, big production.
And he did.
He was definitely.
But he was also out for 9 games.
He was, but he's definitely a good player. He's, and so definitely, and then you're back in the Big East. You're under Hurley, so you're getting the recognition, you're getting the media attention, you're getting all that. But my concern is that you stay in college to develop.
Sure.
And even if you're ready now, we've seen what happens also by staying an extra year, what it really does. It can really elevate, help you.
Sure.
So top 20, top 10 does not seem like a big hurdle, but it's not so much being a top 20, top 10. It's about getting into the NBA and being an NBA-ready player.
And then maybe sticking around, not just playing a season.
And just kind of morphing into it because, there's a big difference between, calling Boatnight the next LeBron James versus just the next player to go in the NBA.
Yeah.
And all I can go off is the eye test as a UConn fan and say, well, yeah, I guess overall, over the course of a season, he had a lot of good games. But in those pressure games, the Big East tournament, And, you know, in the tournament, in the first round of the tournament game, he did not ball. He just did not have the game that you thought he was going to have. And in the NBA, that's the level of competition
Sure.
that you're going to be facing. And so can you produce day in and day out, you know, with that kind of level? And that's always kind of been my concern about him moving forward. But,
Sure.
you know, it is his decision. You know, there is obviously, like I said, there's a lot of incentives from the personal standpoint, you know, with the money, you know, and getting in there. And, you know, hopefully if for some reason he does go to the G League, you know, I don't know if players want that. I don't think they really do. But, you know, can the G League develop players who left college too soon? You know, I think the jury's still out about, you know, how effective that is. But I guess those are just kind of just my concerns about someone kind of jumping the ship like him too early.
Yep, that makes sense.
But no, I mean, as a UConn fan, I'm sad, but I also, you know, do wish him the best. And, you know, I hope you see his name somewhere. Maybe he's struck by the Knicks. I don't know. but we'll see. But, yeah, well, guys, we'll come back on the scoop and we'll have some more topics to discuss here. Welcome back to the Scoop, everybody. I'm Eric. This is Dave right here.
What's going on?
We talked about some college basketball to start. Now let's shift our way over to football because, you know, we just love football so much. We always have to talk about football. I won't talk about quarterbacks this time, though, Dave, but we do have one macro topic and one team-specific topic. We'll start with the macro topic here. Earlier this week, the NFL announced officially that there will be a 17-game season. The schedule was released. And so, as a football fan, you know, more football, you know, I don't mind watching an extra game. You know, it's just another Sunday to actually watch a game I care about. To take away one preseason game. As a matter of fact,
which I'm okay with.
As a matter of fact, one thing they didn't mention, and I found this out was pretty cool, is that because they're doing a 17-game season, they're actually going to be pushing out Super Bowl weekend one extra.
Yeah, I saw that.
And what's going to end up happening is in most calendar years, it's actually going to fall on the Sunday before President's Day, which is actually a day that most schools and some people actually
are already off.
And so, because there's always been this debate about,
should we get
Monday after Super Bowl? And like, no, it's too soon. But now we actually are in that nice little, won't be next year, but many years coming out, we'll have that. So that's a big plus. So I think for the fan and from a revenue standpoint, it's a very positive thing to have these 17 games. But there has been some backlash from some of the players about this.
Yep.
Basically from the wear and tear of, you know, just more wear and tear, I guess. Now, one extra game, you know, is going to make or break, you know, an extra year in the league or that. And so, with that in mind, Dave, and again, I'm not a football player. You know, I can't imagine the strain these players have. But should these players really have a beef with playing an extra game?
I mean, they've got the right to. Whether or not there's merit or, you know, sufficient evidence to back up their claims is another. And I want to do more digging into that because, again, I haven't played football since Pee Wee. You said you don't play. You never played. Yeah. So we're coming at this from a pure, you know, pretty blind in terms of the physicality.
From an observation perspective.
I mean, I've played hockey. You've played hockey.
I played
physical sport.
Yeah.
But with that being said, you know, hockey as a sport, collectively, pro, semi-pro, college, they play way more games than football. Just stat-wise, they play more games. With that being said, that's another aspect that I don't want to dive down right now. But simply put, I think the players ultimately, because what I would hate to see is I would hate to see some guys like sitting out earlier in the year just so that they can, and I know it's with a one game, but like just so that they can, you know, save themselves for weeks 16, 17, 18. When week 1 and 2, 3, 4 could just be as big of games, and a guy decides to sit out and they allow it. I don't know. I just think it's a slippery slope to, like, again, as a fan and selfishly, I like that there's an extra game. It takes away a preseason game, which is long overdue. But I don't know if I love the idea yet. I thought I would as a Jet fan. It would give them an extra game to potentially make the playoffs. But from that standpoint, that was the only positive I was happy about. I don't know how happy I am, honestly. And we can dive more into it as I do more research onto it. And I want to look at what actual players said what. Because there's a lot out there, like you said. I don't know how to feel yet. I don't know how to feel.
Yeah, I said, Dave, there's our perspective, which is more, from an observation perspective, and then there's, the players themselves. I think as a player, you're obviously going to right to be upset about it. If I'm working my job and then my boss says, I'm going to give you, 5% extra work or 10% extra work and you get the same level of pay, then I would have a beef. Now, I need to learn more about how the revenue sharing is going to work with this. But my understanding is that, unfortunately, most of the extra revenue coming from a 17 game is actually going to fall to the owners and not so much the players. And so I think there's some beef on that perspective. But it does, I think, increase the salary cap moving forward for a lot of these teams to either sign, more big star players or allow more money for their big star players.
Sure.
And so I think for the star players, there's less of a beef because they know most of that's going to go towards them. But if you're just, necessarily an average player,
right,
then you're not really going to see that. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of this like, I'm not seeing it. So I guess there's definitely, both sides. There's a reason why they like it or not like it. But ultimately, of the 4 pro sports, this is the one with the fewest number of games, 16 games, now 17. And, a team's going to have certain strategies, I think, in terms of how to mitigate this. It's not to say that, all your players have to play 17 games in a season, as it is with injuries and other things. They always miss games. And so, there's going to be some workarounds, I think, with the 17-game season. But I don't think the players should have a beef with it. I mean, I think there's going to be an adjustment, I think, going to a 17-game because it's an extra week of preparation. But I think over time, as they adjust to this, it'll kind of be a forgotten thing. Especially when there's more money in their pockets, and just that everybody's more happy. I said overall, I think the schedule, the Super Bowl weekend is gonna make things work better, and that one less preseason game, which that's what they're really not like. So we'll leave it at that. It's exciting, but hopefully their beef is not going to carry forward as we get into the fall here.
Sure.
But moving on, and I do want to focus now on the New York Giants. And we go back and forth, Dave. Sometimes the Jets, sometimes the Giants. We pick up
other
Jets
teams.
Too. But I want to bring up the Giants, and I was going to bring up the Patriots too a little bit, but I'm not going to do that.
Thank you.
I'm
Very nice.
I'm looking at the Giants. There was a connection here, but basically it's about free agent signings, and so we went through a very extreme phase of free agents, and we focus mostly on the quarterbacks the last couple of shows, because usually the quarterbacks are first on the chopping block in free agency. But then after you get past quarterback, then you start going, for other big names, wide receivers, running backs, whatever, before the draft. The New York Giants wasted no time this year, and they finally just dove out off the deep ends, and they just went on a crazy shopping spree. And just to give you an idea, Dave, there was Kenny Galladay was obviously the big one, wide receiver. And then there's Kyle Rudolph. There's Jackson at cornerback. There's Ross at wide receiver, and there's Devontae Booker actually. They signed them as a backup. They let Wayne Gallman go, and now they have Devontae Booker as their new backup running back. So there was a belief last year of the New York Giants that they were with Joe Judge there, that defensively they were finally shown some respect, as a respectable franchise in that weak division, the NFC East.
Sure.
That the offense is what needed the upgrades because Daniel Jones was not a quarterback who could carry them, and that he was lacking a lot of critical weapons. Well, now with now with the running back coming back, Saquon Barkley, and now you have all these extra weapons, Kenny Galladay. Do the Giants now deserve to be the NFC East favorites in your opinion? And I'm going to ask you, Dave, because I would be biased as a Giants fan, but as a non-Giants fan, where do you think the Giants actually fit in that division?
They're either going to be in first or they're going to be dead last.
Really? So it's like a boom or bust kind of thing.
And I'm not sure how to feel, and a lot of that is predicated on your quarterback.
So it's either going to work really well,
and how well Saquon comes back.
Yeah. So it's either going to work really well, Dave, or it's going to blow up in
backfire completely. Okay. I'm not sold on which. That's why I can see why, as a Giant fan, you're like,
I really like that take, Dave, because I think it's very fair to say that Daniel Jones got maybe a little bit of an excuse last year because there was 2 years ago, rookie season, taking over Eli Manning. You expect rookie mistakes, but overall he did okay.
He did all right, yeah.
Last year there was the hope that at the very least that he can build upon his rookie year, and he did not. He just disappointed. But then, they finished 6-10 because they had a good defense, and then there was the whole, well, if only, Evan Ingram didn't drop that ball against Philly, they would have won the division at 7-9, but there was a lot of excuses, I think, about the Giants offensively that kind of, took some pressure off Daniel Jones. And they said, if only he had better weapons. Well, guess what, Dave?
I know.
They just got you some weapons.
Yeah, they did.
They got you a lot of weapons.
That much they do.
Now, Saquon Barkley, again, I think is the big wild card here, because when you come off an ACL, you just don't know. I mean, you like to think they can get back to 100% or close to 100% and be somewhat effective, but you just don't know.
You don't.
And so if he struggles, that's gonna really throw this team back a little bit. Golladay again, but same thing, Dave. Is he a number one receiver? I guess on paper he is, but he's also very injury prone, and I just don't put him in the same category. It's like
it's tough,
as DeAndre Hopkins, or Julio Jones, or I just don't put him in that category yet. But there's a belief on paper that he belongs there, and so the question is, can he stay healthy? And if he does stay healthy, is he going to produce numbers like that? With a theoretical star QB, the next Eli Manning for the New York Giants? That's going to be the big question. But no, Dave, I like your take, because it's easy to kind of say, with Dak Prescott in Dallas,
yep.
Washington's defense, they're not going to go past both of them. But this is a loaded team now.
They are.
This is a loaded team. People have faith in Joe Judge. I like Joe Judge. There's a belief that if he can unite the troops and get everyone playing at a high level, that this team could go, I don't know, Dave, let's say 11-5 maybe. If things go really perfect, maybe 12-4, but I don't think any real Giant fan thinks they're actually going to do that. But in that division, 10-6 is going to win your division.
Yep.
So you just got to get the 10 wins, and you'll be in the playoffs. And that's what they're kind of saying.
Right.
But as a pessimistic Giants fan, which I know you hate when I'm pessimistic because of all the Jets misery, but as a pessimistic Giants fan, I'm like, boy, I have not seen anything from Daniel Jones that makes me think that we're going to get 10 wins. I've seen Barkley shine at times, but I've seen him just struggle with a bad offensive line. And Golladay. I mean, that's the big thing right there, is Golladay. Can he stay healthy? And that's what I'm going to ultimately pin the season on. Right. And we'll see about Daniel Jones. I mean, Danny Dimes, as they call him. So hopefully we're more than a dime in the league. But yeah, we'll leave it at that with the New York Giants. And we'll come back, guys, with a few more topics here on The Scoop. Welcome back to The Scoop, everybody. I'm Eric. This is Dave. And we want to change gears once again. We started with college basketball. I went to NFL. Now let's talk about baseball, Dave. And yesterday, opening day. Yeah. Very excited. I was not a fan in the stands, but fans were obviously allowed back. And if you're a Yankees fan, you were happy for 8 innings and probably disappointed for 2. And the main reason being is that obviously the Yankees lost 3-2 in 10 innings, but because on full display, the first time in front of fans was the new 10th inning rule that came into place where they start runner in second. And so here we are, the Yankees, they're on top of the 10th, runner in second, and the winning run scored just like that. And basically there's a belief that because of this new rule, that's why the Yankees did lose yesterday. Even though bottom of the 10th, they have the same advantage, and they just could not, get the runner across. So Dave, I think you had a thought about, the new rule, kind of, what your take is on it. Is it really going to be good for baseball? How do we process the new rule?
Well, here's the thing, and like you just said, and I'll keep this short because this can be a whole thing. Will it be good for baseball? And that's why I could say yes and no. Mm-hmm. Is it good for baseball? Is it good for the game and its popularity? Mm-hmm. Because it makes the game potentially shorter. Mm-hmm. So people are not sticking around for 4 hours if it does go to the 16th or 17th, mm-hmm. Especially on a week or school night.
Yep.
And which is where a lot of the problems fell between. The whole point has been trying to shorten games, mm-hmm. and keep people interested, especially the younger generations that are coming up and preferring mm-hmm. faster pace more action type events. So I think from a growing the game perspective, it could help. But from like, you know, from a making it like again, you're moving down a slippery slope to cater to every fan's crazy expectations when some people are more than happy to sit there for 16 innings. And I don't mean like happy because like even I will get bored at a game for 16 innings. That's a long time. But I mean from the perspective of like, you know, I still bought my money's worth. So if I'm paying X amount to be somewhere, I don't want it to be over in an hour and a half. Which is why, you know, and a whole other aspect of this is, you know, I plenty of people would get mad is, you know, if they go to a concert and the headliner's only on for 45 minutes to an hour and they pay exorbitant prices to be there and they feel gypped because you're not getting what you believe to be the money's worth. You know, you saw 3 hours of openers, but you came to see someone who's now on stage for 45 minutes. So, but that's a separate diluted version of what I'm getting at here. I'm not sure I love, because again, the more you start changing things, it leaves the door open to completely changing things to where you almost don't recognize the game anymore. And I'm not saying this year, like this rule doesn't do that, but I'm just saying if you start doing stuff like this, you leave the door open to so many other things happening that will take away the continuity of the sport or of the experience as a whole. However, I do agree that for a long time they've needed to find ways to shorten the game or speed it up, which is why I agreed with the making the pitch count, pitch time rule, the clock, so that, you know, they can just sit back there and frickin', you know, have a job interview before they threw their next pitch. So I like the rule, but I get why people don't, because it's giving. But here's the thing too. You said, you know, you said it perfectly. It's giving both teams an advantage. It's not giving another team one over another. Because it'd be one thing if you were giving it to just the home team. Then we'd have way bigger issues, obviously. But because they're keeping the playing field even and putting, you know what I mean? I don't think I have an issue with it. I kind of like it. It does make it interesting in that perspective, because then now you're sitting on the edge, like, oh, this one base hit could end it. So like it does make it more interesting. So from that perspective, entertainment wise, I like it. That's where I'll
start. You know, Dave. You know, this is, to my knowledge, this is the first time that a professional sport instituted something that tried to shorten a game.
Right.
The best example that I have is the NHL. And if you remember, before the lockout, games just ended in ties all the time. And you know, they didn't really like that. You know, NHL is a very intense game, and after 60 minutes, 65 minutes, and in a tie, fans always left very disappointed. They wanted something to be changed. So after the lockout, they introduced the shootout. And for the most part, fans were very enthusiastic about the shootouts. It was a big change to the game, because not only were you getting their ties, it was kind of this new enthusiastic, you know, part of the game, you know, that often went to overtime, and you decided a winner. You couldn't decide it just on the ice because you didn't want to play an extra period or just do continuous overtime. So it made perfect sense. And so, but what ended up happening is over time, the shootout, and it's still exciting, but it definitely lost the interest that it had early on. And so what they decided is that, and then of course the shootout did add extra time to a game. So a few years ago, they actually instituted a rule where overtime is now 3-on-3, which is really exciting because
I agree.
Because you go to shootouts a lot less. You still have them, but in the 3-on-3 game, it's so spaced out, so wide open. It's like backyard, like pond style that I believe, and we'll find the actual number, but I'm just going to throw something at that. Maybe like 7 times out of 10, the game ends in overtime for a shootout. And honestly, when I watch the 3-on-3, to me it's way more exciting.
I agree,
because you know it just settles the game a lot faster. It makes it just way more exciting. And again, shootouts are great, but those can drag on too. If you remember, I don't know if you remember, Dave, in 2005, the Capitals and Rangers went 18 rounds in a shootout. Until Merrick Malik actually won it through his legs. So it was worth it, but I mean, going those 18 rounds, I mean, on the losing end is definitely not an exciting thing. But I guess the point is, Dave, is that, at time to time when a league has an issue in terms of something about the result of a game, whether it's time-based or excitement-based, they will make these drastic changes.
Yeah.
Baseball has been a sport to try to has always been last to be innovative like that. They've always been behind the curve, instant replay, and things like that. So they're finally looking at it and saying, okay, we want to keep these games shorter. We don't want these to be 4 or 5 hour games like the Yankees Red Sox always do. And so they're trying to really just say, okay, let's just stop it.
Makes sense.
So I do think it's going to be an adjustment. Like I said, it gives both teams an advantage. I think the fans are kind of mixed on it right now, but I think once we get used to it a little bit, we'll kind of accept it as is, and teams will learn to adapt. Maybe they'll get better bullpens so that they can be more on the advantage on that situation.
Sure.
But yeah, that's exciting. We'll see how those play out. I want to quickly talk about a couple of things, Dave, before we wrap up. NASCAR, and I know, Dave, you're not a NASCAR fan. You made it very clear.
I just don't know a lot about it.
You just don't know a lot about it, and we definitely should talk more about it. But we want to talk about NASCAR, and the most exciting thing that happened this year, besides Daytona 500, is they actually raced on dirt.
Oh, did
at Bristol.
Nice.
Of course, it was rained down Sunday because that's what happens in NASCAR events. They get rained out, and then they rain on dirt. And it was now getting a rain out on asphalt is one thing. Rain on dirt creates mud.
Yep.
There was a Truck Series race, and they tried. And once it started drizzling just a little bit, the dirt turned to mud very quickly, and they got mud all over the windshields and the tires. It was not safe.
Right.
And so there's a lot of skepticism about the dirt race. And then, of course, on Sunday it rained, so of course they had to postpone to Monday. But they did get a race in on Monday. Joey Logano won from Middletown, Connecticut. By the way.
I know. Yeah, that I do know.
So you know that. He was pretty excited. But if you watched it, it was definitely. It's been 50 years since NASCAR raced on dirt.
Yeah.
Richard Petty won the last dirt race, of course, the King.
Yeah.
But it was very exciting to watch. I will say.
I would imagine.
Because and they're going to do it. They're going to do it next year too. It's a lot of preparation. It's kind of like the Winter Classic for NHL.
No, yeah.
You have to you have to make sure the climate is ideal. You do all the setup and stuff.
Yep.
With that dirt in and out.
When I was in Charlotte, dude, I can't tell you how many people wanted to go to races.
Yep.
And it just didn't work out that I went. But I was definitely interested. I'm a little ignorant. I want. And it's a sport that is harder to get into unless you're actively racing. Or a part of the scene or tailgating, because that's what I've heard is awesome about it too. I've heard that the atmosphere is awesome.
I went to a Dover race in 2006, and it's a big tailgate party basically. So it's a very exciting thing, and we'll talk more about it.
Yeah, we will. I want to.
But
sure.
And then the next show we'll talk about maybe NASCAR points. Chase Elliott was the defending champion last year. Not off to a very good start this year in terms of his performance. But we do want to get to that. Wrap up one last quick thing, Dave. I wanted to do a little shout out to the Connecticut Hockey League. And I think I told you, Dave, I do play hockey. Yep. But not a pro, not great. But I do play, and we play in a league called the Connecticut Hockey League. Yep. So I want to give a little shout out to the league on this show.
Shout out.
We do want to, and we'll keep promoting it. But basically,
sure.
There's a bunch of if you don't know. It's basically whether you're new to hockey or you play college or high school hockey, you're not a pro, but you want to play. It's a league, operates in Cromwell, Newington, and Northford down by New Haven. And they have leagues year-round. There's seasons year-round. And they have all these tiers for different talent levels. It's a lot of fun.
Quickly though, give any listener, if you're from Connecticut, how would they go about signing up or joining?
You go to ConnecticutHockeyLeague.com.
That seems too simple.
How original is that? CTHockeyLeague.com.
Okay.
And you can just if you're an individual, you can just send them an email saying, look for.
If you're not an individual,
if you're you can be a group. If you have a bunch of if you recruit a bunch of buddies and say,
sure.
Guys, you want to play hockey, and they're like, what are you talking about? We don't play hockey. Well, guess what? We can play hockey. We can just pick a team and we just start playing in this league. You can do that, believe it or not. Cool. But if you're an individual, you are allowed to just go to the site and they'll get you set up.
That's awesome.
You need to bring your own equipment. You need to get your own skates, all your equipment, all of that. But yeah, we'll definitely give some more shout outs to that Connecticut Hockey League. And, I have a game coming up on Sunday. So on Tuesday. I'm sorry, Sunday's Easter. But yeah, we'll wrap it up with that, Dave. And I know you have to head out to PT, but
yeah, I have to be physical therapy.
But we appreciate you taking the time on our new studio.
And we're going to keep improving it, guys.
We're getting better every episode, Dave. Every episode we're going to be kicking it in no time. But But yeah, thank you everybody for watching us on The Scoop. I'm Eric. That's Dave.
See you next time.
See you next time.